Oh, okay, okay.
Put it like, like soap and then
Oh, okay, like a patty.
yeah. They make money.
And by the time I heard boom, huh? What's gonna happen to me?
And the joy we shared, the magic that we've known, is something that we owe. Though we may be alone, it's just goodbye. Remember, time was never our friend. We walked a road together. We came to the end. It's just goodbye. Now I won't tell you not to cry, but I swear that what we had won't die. 'Cause it isn't over. It's just goodbye. It's just goodbye. It doesn't really matter why. I know what we had can never die. 'Cause I'll always love you. Yes, I'll always love you. So it's just goodbye.
Today, the Insider exclusive investigation news team is on location in New York with Spencer Herman at his law offices to discuss the legal challenges he faced in representing the Guzman family in a new network TV special, Justice in America, Guia Guzman's story. Despite the fact that the bus's dash cam clearly showed they were 100% liable for Guia's tragic and untimely death, under New York law, when someone dies under circumstances similar to Guia's, the surviving family's recovery for wrongful death is largely limited to the financial loss suffered by those who were financially dependent on the decedent. Recovery to the surviving relatives for their emotional pain and suffering and grief are not permitted under New York's antiquated law. But also under New York law, recovery for provable pre-impact terror and post-accident conscious pain and suffering is permitted. The challenge was to maximize settlement value, and in this special edition of the Justice in America network TV series, Spencer shares with us how he successfully settled the case for the sum of $700,000. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from New York. It is my great pleasure to introduce Spencer Herman to the show. Welcome to the show, Spencer.
Glad to be here, Steve.
Tell our audience a little bit about your firm. What type of law do you practice?
Well, October will mark 25 years that I founded this firm. We specialize in wrongful death and personal injury cases, primarily auto accident victims. I do a lot of construction worker type cases, and that's what we specialize in. Occasionally, if there's a malpractice case, we work with other lawyers, but right here in-house, we also do some trip and falls, slip and falls, which sometimes take us the cases against municipal entities, the City of New York City Transit Authority. That's what we specialize in.
But at all times representing the little guy.
Yes, we are plaintiffs, exclusively a plaintiff's firm. And just some background, my dad was an attorney who did many things, but he also always had some affiliation with personal injury cases. And when you say the little guy, my dad was a World War II veteran, came of age. He was a Depression era person, born in the Depression like my mom. So even before I became a lawyer, just growing up, they always instilled in us the values about standing up for the underdog, not just in a legal context, but I grew up as a teenager through the civil rights movement and things like that. So helping the little guy was always important to me, and that's why I got into this field.
Well, you have done a good job at that. In fact, that's the reason we're here today. We are talking about a case that you represented, the Guzman family, and a woman that was accidentally and unfortunately killed, Guia Guzman.
Right.
Tell our audience a little bit about who she was.
Well, Guia, and of course, I never met her, obviously, but when I met the family initially, she was survived by her husband, Roberto, 3 wonderful adult children, at the time 8 grandchildren. So Guia, as I learned, as her husband, they were born in the Philippines, and they left the Philippines in 1972, as many people did, to try to get a better life for their children. At the time, they had 2 of their 3 children. When they arrived here in the States, Guia became a medical secretary, working in the Brooklyn Hospital, where her husband became a full-time practicing physician. So Guia worked for 30 years there, but she was a passionate traveler. Her husband, they went to church regularly. They went bowling. But as I learned through this case, and to make her a live person, not just a name on a piece of paper, I had the family, the adult children, write me out, if you will, some testimonials. The husband was a little bit more reserved, but through those, I really learned about Guia. Beyond her working, she was a devoted wife, a beloved mother, grandmother, who, in the words of synthesizing the testimonials I got from the 3 children, first of all, Guia in Spanish, which was a language from the Philippines, meant guide. So her children, even as they grew older, she continued to be a guide for them. She was a spiritual advisor. She was a teacher. So these were things that I learned about this woman, and she sounded like a fabulous woman, and it was such a crushing loss for the entire family.
Tell us what happened to Guia.
So Guia was off, this was February 24th.
And she was 81 years old.
She was 81, just shy of it, actually 81. And she was off for her morning walk in her neighborhood in Nassau County, Oceanside. And she was crossing at an unmarked crosswalk. Beautiful, clear day. It was 8 in the morning. And she had actually cleared 3 lanes. She was walking south to north on a 2-way roadway, and a bus driven by a Guardian school bus. Fortunately, there were no children in the bus, but the driver of that school bus, obviously, and we later learned this from a dash cam video. I didn't know this initially when we first got the case, because all I had was the basic police report. But eventually, once the suit was filed, we were able to get this dash cam video, which, the expression, pictures are 1,000 words, this dash cam video just showed, it was more than just negligence. It was kind of recklessness that this driver, who had her in plain view, as shown on the video, for almost 8 to 10 seconds, and she never slowed down. And what we learned from that dash cam video was, from the moment she made a left turn and was going down that main thoroughfare, Widener Avenue, she was going westbound, and just talking, gabbing away with her matron. She must have just taken her eye off or something, but then, as I said, Guia was walking from her left to her right in plain view. And unfortunately, the bus, she got creamed, and she was propelled in the air, smashed to the ground, and passed away from massive injuries.
Right. When we watch the video, and all the video does is take us up to the point of impact. But we hear the bus driver talking with her friend that who had been distracting her, if you will, right? Nobody gets out of the bus to check on the woman. They know they've hit somebody. Nobody gets out.
Yes.
And as you see in the video, there is another driver that stops and goes over and I guess calls 911. And the only concern that the bus driver has at that time is if anything bad is going to happen to her.
Yes.
She's killed somebody and she's concerned about herself. It's just amazing.
It was. And Steve, when I first signed up the case, and I was retained pretty soon, within maybe a week to 10 days, and the surviving husband came in with the three children. And of course, they're still grieving tremendously. But at the same time, and I find this happens sometimes in a death case, whether it's auto or some of my construction, there was some anger and about, how did this happen? It was bright, clear day. How could my mother, be, mowed down by a bus? So initially, one of the things the family had wanted to know, and this again is a week to 10 days after the accident, is what is the likelihood of any criminal charges? So I had to say to them, well, this is early on. This is going to be in the hands of the Nassau County Police Department, detectives, and ultimately the DA. And, I said to them, listen, I don't think this woman set out to intentionally, hurt your mom. But anyway, so I had to say, listen, that's going to be up to them. And we didn't have the video at the time, so we didn't know how outrageous, really, the negligence was. And as you said, Steve, when you hear in the video after the impact, the two of them just continuing to talk away and just not getting out of the bus, showing no remorse, no care to see what happened, and just going on and on about only caring, is this going to impact, especially the driver, is this going to impact my career? So
eventually there was action taken against her.
She had her license revoked because in New York State, Steve, when there's a death from a motor vehicle, we have a provision in the law, there's a mandatory administrative hearing where the issue is, should a driver's license, an individual driver's license, either be suspended or revoked, depending on the facts. So we all got together. I had the family online. We were doing this by Zoom, of course. And the administrative judge initially, nobody really, the driver didn't show any remorse other than through her attorney saying, I'm sorry. The administrative judge had indicated to me that he didn't really need testimony from the family. But after that hearing, I said, he's got to get the full picture. And I sent him the dash cam video, and I urged him in an email to say, at a minimum, you ought to have this driver's license suspended, and whatever provision in law can make her take safe driving courses, which there is under New York law. And then, to my satisfaction, and I think ultimately the families, more so than even in some ways, more so than the financial recovery, which I know we're going to talk about, they revoked her license. So we got a dangerous driver off the road. And I did check, it wasn't permanently, but she did get her license back about 2 years later. But when I shared that with the Guzman family, the father, the surviving husband, and the children, there was great satisfaction that there was that punishment, and deservedly so, as again, that video just graphically portrays.
Right. One of the most interesting facts of this case is the legal strategies that you took to get a very substantial recovery. I think it was, $700,000?
Correct.
Because even though it's very clear that the driver is 100% responsible, no doubt about it. Tell us about the law and how it negatively affects folks when they're in a wrongful death, when they're killed, but nobody's dependent on them financially.
The main measure of our wrongful death law, which actually dates back to, I think, 1864, believe it or not, Steve, the main element of recovery in a wrongful death case is the financial loss to those who were dependent. So Guia having been retired, and she made some modest contributions with her Social Security to the family, to her and her husband. But for the large part, since this didn't happen when she was younger and supporting her children, our wrongful death law, again, financial law, there's a fancy word, pecuniary loss to the survivors, that aspect of the case was relatively modest. And that also penalizes, just by way of reference, if a teenager dies, unfortunately, and they're survived by their parents and they're not giving them financial support, what's the value of the wrongful death life? And this was something that later on, not so much at the beginning, but when we were getting towards settlement and we had to price out, what would be reasonable, initially they say, how can this not be worth substantially more? So I explained to them that what that law is. However, what we were able to do to push it up to an excellent result, the $700,000 number, there were some additional factors that went into that. One was you can, even in a wrongful death case, if you can show two things, if you can show what they call pre-impact terror, like before the bus hit her, you can get some money for that. How much? That's up to a jury. Also, if there's any pain and suffering after the impact, you can get that. Now, in our case, we had minimal, only seconds worth of that. But researching precedent in the context of a death case, even for a second or two of pre-impact terror, or in her case, post-impact pain and suffering, you can also get some additional money. So we retained an accident reconstruction expert who looked at the video and said that based on his expertise, Guia would have perceived, even though it might have been a second or so, that bus was about to come on her. So that was something when we went to the mediation and we're presenting this to the defendant, we said, well, there's going to be an aspect of that. And then as far as the post-impact pain and suffering, when she hit the ground, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for her, that she didn't suffer, when she hit the ground, she sustained a fracture of her neck, which basically, that was the injury and the head trauma that killed her. But she also had massive right leg fractures from that impact. And with the benefit of a forensic pathologist, we also had that. So we put that out there. And finally, you can still also consider when you're fixing a dollar figure in a wrongful death case, it's an intangible thing that's still on the books, but you can look at the relationship with others, guidance, and nurture. So even though the adult children were not living with her, they were a very close-knit family. So putting all those three things together, the relationship with the adult children, they lost a friend, a mentor, a guide, the pre-impact terror, the post-impact, we were able to push up what otherwise would have been a somewhat much lesser case. And I'll never forget when the defense lawyer first contacted me, Steve, because he knew his client was pretty much, I hate to use that word, dead in the water when it comes to liability. So his first thing was, Spencer, these cases are not worth very much money. And he was, posturing, maybe, $250,000 to settle this case. I said, not so fast. There's a lot of other elements. And when we went to mediation and I presented my papers and we had the benefit of our experts, letting them know that if this case went to trial, we would also be able to talk about the relationship, not just between Guia and her husband, Roberto, but the adult children and even the grandchildren. So that's, I think, how we...
And I think with all the experts and everything that you were using, they came up with an estimate of about $212,000. that this case could be settled for, that it would be worth. But I do want to interject the fact that your daughter, once again,
Mara Jill Herman, yeah.
produced
Right.
and presented a tribute, a memoriam rather, to Gia's life. And I think it was because of that, wasn't it? That the decision came down that it was worth at least $700,000,
Yes.
correct?
Absolutely.
Would you talk a little bit about that?
So one of the things I've been trained in in a death case, and even injury cases, but more so in a death case, you want the decedent to come to life. So as the litigation went forward, even though we resolved it within a year, which was very fast in our system, one of the things I told the family members, in addition to getting those testimonials, which gave me a lot about Gia, was I said, you got to give me photos. Give me photos from her life, starting with as far back as you can. And I think we had some photos showing her on her wedding day with Roberto in the Philippines. And they gave me, I think, hundreds of photographs that span the years, starting at the marriage and almost to the close in time to her passing, when the young son, you see her walking or holding one of the younger son's kids. So my daughter was able, I said, Mara, and she had skills that she actually acquired when she was in high school. She was in a specialty art course and film course where they told her how to do these things. And I said, can you put together a montage and I pick a song to do that? And that absolutely, on top of everything else, maybe even more so than the experts with the pre-impact terror and the post-impact pain and suffering, because during the mediation, Steve, it's no surprise, they of course said, well, listen, we don't think there's any of that. No pre-impact terror, no post. But, I think all in all, with the two biggest things that I think pushed this up was that Guia de Guzman tribute montage, as well as, of course, that dash cam video, which I don't think the defense or their insurance companies ever wanted a jury to look at.
Right. It's kind of interesting you brought up these issues about pre-impact terror and post-impact traumatic experiences, which are used and figured in a lot of airplane crashes. Yes. A lot of people say, well, the plane, they took 8 seconds to fall to the ground or whatever, but what was going through those minds? I remember the TWA, was it TWA plane that crashed right above New Jersey, New York?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, that was used in that case, and it really added value to what a person's life was worth. Because, there are, even though somebody is not paying for your expenses, there's emotional connections you don't have anymore.
Absolutely, yes.
So you did a great job on that case,
And just getting back, I don't know if you wanted me to speak to that. So speaking of our law, the archaic wrongful death statute, and I'm a member of our trial lawyers, the New York State Trial Lawyers Association, and we in New York are still, I think, the only state in the union that has this archaic law where they measure and value a wrongful death life, on the cheap, if you will, and especially, as I said, it punishes families of teenage a teenager who may die with somebody like Gia, where again they say the main value is based on financial loss to the decedent. So here in New York, 2 years in a row now, our state legislators, both houses, overwhelmingly passed something called the Grieving Families Act, which finally was going to put New York in touch with the rest of the country and allow survivors, like in this family, minimally the husband, perhaps even the adult children, well, possibly would be entitled to get emotional damages, which is obviously there. So we've passed that. Regrettably, our governor has vetoed that. And I know I just went to our annual Law Day dinner, and we're not going to let down on that. We're going to keep trying to get that passed so there'll be justice, proper justice for wrongful death surviving family members.
Yeah, and it should be. And I was surprised to read about that, considering the fact that your governor is a Democrat.
Yes, yes.
One of the reasons we do these shows is because we want to bring up the fact that there are laws still on the books. In the state where I'm from, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we have laws that are called blue laws that have never been repealed. And technically, a police officer can arrest you for, who knows, dancing in the street at 11 o'clock in the morning or whatever, whatever laws are on there. And it's unfortunate that in the state of New York, you say the law dates back to 1874.
Or 64, I believe. Somewhere there. What's 10 years anyway, right?
It's amazing considering the fact that New York is one of the best states for a plaintiff lawyer to practice in.
That's true.
Because you have, like in your construction cases, what I love about construction cases is that no matter who is at fault in an accident, in a wrongful death, whatever, the general contractor is the person you can go after.
And the owner.
Yeah, and they're the ones that have the deep pockets. So they're the ones, if a family loses somebody, can receive compensation for the loss of or the injuries to their loved ones.
Yep, that's true.
When you get contacted to represent people, how do you finally end up selecting the cases you take on? Let's talk about the Guia case. You didn't have any information. You didn't have dash camera. It's their word against a dead woman's word. No words, basically. So why did you take the case on?
I took the case because, as I said, the family came in, within a week. We had just the basic police report, which gave me some information. And I felt that we were going to be still a pedestrian. It happened in the daytime. We knew it was a clear and dry day. And also, even though they weren't there and the witnesses, there was some connection to this family too. That, this was a terrible loss to not only the surviving husband, Roberto, but again, the 3 adult children there. And I learned on the intake what a wonderful, solid family this was. And I could see their pain. And I said, we're going to do everything we can and to get you, civil justice. So that's why I made the determination, even based on, at that time, just limited information, that this was a case I was going to take. And in short order, when I went out to the scene, before the dash cam video, I realized that one way or another, we were going to hold this driver responsible for Guia's tragic death.
Well, again, congratulations on the result. And I want to thank you very much for being on this show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.